I am Quentin Collins, alum and assistant director of LaSalle University's Solstice MFA Low Residency Creative Writing Program. Welcome to the fifth in a series of 7 evening readings taking place here in Auburndale, Massachusetts as part of our winter 2025 10-day residency start of our spring semester. For tonight's reading, first up, we will have our guest faculty member, Crystal King, who will be introduced by fiction student Jay Snyder. Then we will have faculty member Jennifer Jean, introduced by grad assistant and alum Ellen Austin Lee. Next up, we will have our writer in residence, Lee Hope, who will be introduced by fiction student Caroline Osborne by way of our Writing for Young People student, Sister Allison Goliath. And then we will conclude with writer in residence, Dzvinia Orlowsky, who will be introduced by poetry student Bob Whalen. Jay, come on up to the mic.
Hi, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Crystal King. When Quentin asked me to do this, I'm thinking, okay, gives me an opportunity to buy another book and drive my family nuts by buying another book. But I bought her novel In the Garden of Monsters. I was thoroughly blown away. She is a novelist, a culinary enthusiast, an expert in marketing and social media. She's a lover of Italian history, food, language, and culture. She's taught writing, creativity, and social media at UMass Boston, the Massachusetts College of Art, Harvard Extension School, and Grub Street. She's a Pushcart Prize nominated poet and was co-editor of Plum Ruby Review. She grew up in the Pacific Northwest and now lives in Boston. I will tell you, she has a massive playlist. If you go on her website, it'll take you to her Spotify list. It has a massive playlist of indie, alternative, new wave, and punk music. Her novels include In the Garden of Monsters, The Chef's Secret, and Feast of Sorrow. And a really cool thing about it is the back of the novels have recipes. So if you like to cook, you'll love it. So my pleasure again to introduce to you, Crystal King.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. All right, I think I got it. Okay. I am going to read tonight from my third novel, In the Garden of Monsters, which is this crazy story. My first 2 novels are historical fiction. The Feast of Sorrow is about this ancient Roman gourmand, this guy named Apicius, who lived in first century Rome, and he wanted to be gastronomic advisor to Caesar. My second novel is The Chef's Secret. It's about a Renaissance chef, Bartolomeo Scapi, and he was a chef to several popes and cardinals, and they were real people. And I have a real person in this novel. It's a story of Hades and Persephone, but it's told from the point of view of a model that Salvador Dali brings to a garden that really exists, this place called the Sacro Bosco. It's an hour north of Rome in Bomarzo, Italy. And he brings a model there to paint. And the model is named Julia. And I'm going to skip the prologue. I normally would say don't skip the prologue, but in this case, I'm going to skip it for you. The prologue gives a little bit of history that is relevant to the core of the book. Some foreshadowing, I should say. And so we're going to start at the beginning because it's a good place to start a story. Rome in 1948. Julia, I still don't think you should go, Lillian said as we sat down at the base of the Spanish Steps near the entrance to the famous Babington's tea room. It was late in the afternoon and the sunlight glowed against the boat-shaped fountain that Bernini's father had designed nearly 300 years before. I sighed. Lillian and I had been arguing ever since I'd received the invitation to sit for Salvador Dali. You know this isn't an opportunity I can't pass up. You also know how much I need the money. Dali had made waves in the city papers because he was in town creating sets for the Rome Opera, but he was also painting on the side, which was good for me. I had graduated from the Accademia delle Belle Arti in the spring, but continued to take classes to maintain my student visa, and I modeled to pay the bills. Dali had inquired about me by name. I don't know how he had heard of me, but it was often difficult to find a naturally blonde model in Rome, and I assumed that another person I had sat for had referred me. He wanted to paint me in the guise of an ancient goddess, Proserpina, the Roman counterpart to Persephone. Lillian was convinced it was a bad idea. Come on, he admires fascists for God's sake. You have to be pretty bad to get kicked out of the Surrealists for having weird views. I know, but he's been spending a lot of time in New York, so maybe he's changed. It's only for a week. He's one of the best painters in the world, though, and watching a maestro like him at work isn't something I can pass up. It's only a week. But I hated that she was right, and I felt guilty that I still planned to go. Lillian tried a different angle. Okay, then. But he's also a deviant. You'll be naked in front of him. His wife will be there, I protested. There's nothing to worry about. He only has eyes for galah. Lillian, who worked as a shop girl at a luxury clothing store, had never understood how I could be just as comfortable dressed as I was undressed. But the art scene had always been comfortable with nudity, sexuality, and promiscuity, while the rest of the populace was not. My friend pulled a ribbon from her pocket and began tying up her long dark hair. You don't even like surrealism. That's not true, I insisted. I just hate most surrealism. In fact, I was somewhat obsessive about surrealism, but it was no longer in vogue to say so. Abstract expressionism had taken the art world by storm, and I wanted to sell my work. So I followed the trends, inspired by the likes of Klein and Rothko. But oh, the surrealist tugged at my heart and my soul. It had been Dali's dream caused by the flight of a bumblebee around a pomegranate a second before waking that had lured me in when I was in Madrid. The painting of a naked woman, Dali's longtime muse, his wife Galah, resting on rocks in the middle of the ocean, a pomegranate by her side, had a lot going on. In the sea, another monstrous pomegranate births a rockfish that spits out two tigers, their mouths open wide, their claws ready to rip the woman apart. There's also a floating gun and Dali's first spinely legged elephant. But it was the pomegranate that really caught my eye, how it opened up, bursting with life, and yet the woman lay asleep, unable to react to all the emotion and life around her, lost in a dream. There was something in that painting that resonated with me, that made me feel a little less fragmented. I couldn't explain that to Lillian. She would never understand. She knew the newest version of me, a fabricated tale, born in Italy, raised in Manhattan by an eccentric aunt after my parents' tragic deaths, and educated in Boston before returning to Italy post-war. But the truth is, my earliest memory was emerging from the Pantheon years before into the streets of Rome and a stranger's kindness to help me reach the academia. Beyond this, my past is a void. I have no recollection of family, childhood, or schooling. A doctor once dismissed my amnesia as temporary, but it never resolved. To dispel any awkwardness, I concocted a fictitious past. The story satisfied the curious and accounted for my advanced intellect and erudite speech, traits I never fully understood in myself. I claimed an education at Radcliffe and feigned ties to high society, a narrative that seemed plausible enough to explain my idiosyncrasies. But the way I felt when I looked at that painting by Dali, that was one of the reasons I couldn't turn this job down. There was a connection there, and I had an inexplicable need to discover what it was. Lillian looked at her watch. I really should go. I don't want to be late for my shift, but I hate you gallivanting off to some town no one has ever heard of with a couple of fascists to pretend to be some Proserpina goddess in a wild garden of monsters. Proserpina, I corrected. I know the name's confusing. You could just say Persephone. And don't worry, I'll be home before you know it, and much richer. I'll take you to dinner on the Veneto. On the Veneto? She whistled. I never did ask how much he is paying you, but now I want to know. I pulled out the invitation with the details and handed it to her. Holy mackerel, Jules, she gasped. 75,000 lira a day for 7 days? That's what, $1,000? Dear Lord. I know, pennies from heaven. It will be nice not to be a starving artist for once. And with that kind of cash, I'd be far from starving. But Lil, this is less about the money. It's about the chance of a lifetime to learn from a master, to be depicted as one of my favorite mythical heroines, and to be Dali's muse, she finished for me. I know. She kissed me on the cheek and hugged me goodbye, giving me one last admonishment to be careful. At 4:00 on the dot, a sleek black and red Alfa Romeo pulled up with a wood-paneled Fiat station wagon following behind, laden with luggage and easels strapped to the roof. Salvador Dali stepped out of the elegant car, walking cane in hand, and looked around. The artist wore a beautiful dark gray double-breasted suit, complete with a pink and gray tie, and I worried that he might find my outfit, a simple black sweater over a red dress, lacking. I approached slowly, working up my courage, but Dali caught sight of me and waved me over. Are you my modello? He asked with a thick-clipped Catalan accent, which I'm not going to try to imitate. His mustache curled upward just barely, and his hair was slicked back, his eyes dark and piercing. His ears, which stuck out a bit too much from his head, were his least attractive feature. He had about 20 years on my 24. Julia Lombardi, I said, extending my hand to the artist. Dali clasped it with both of his and kissed it, his lips caressing my skin in a way that would make any woman swoon. You are a goddess, he said, rolling the R in the most dramatic way. He stared at me as though I were a landscape or a rare, precious object. You are exquisite, your skin so pale, like you have stepped forth from the darkness. I was right to ask for you. I blushed. He let go of my hand and looked around at the crowd. Am I stealing you from a boyfriend? Has some dark Italian night swept you off your feet before I got here, my Proserpina? I swallowed, thinking about Lillian's warning of him being a deviant. Unfortunately, it wasn't the first time some men asked me that within a minute or two of meeting. I thought of my last boyfriend, a Roman who was controlling and manipulative. I sent him away. He was inadequate. Dali fell into his fit of deep laughter. All are inadequate for the beauty that is Proserpina. Only the darkest night will satisfy the light within you. A princess in need of a knight, said a woman with a heavy Russian accent as she stepped out of the car. It's a good thing you aren't a knight, Salvador. I breathed a sigh of relief. I had heard so much about Gala. The woman was not just Dali's wife, but his manager. She had inspired many a poet and artist, Eulard, de Chirico, Ernst, and Breton, to name a few. It was said that many of the surrealists did their best work when during the time that they had been sleeping with Gala. I found that particularly interesting because she was rather plain of face, with a long nose and disapproving stare. Yet she moved with a sexuality and assurance that I envied. She walked up to me and took my chin in her hand, her grip harder than it needed to be. Good, your skin really is like porcelain. Imagine her as Proserpina, pomegranate seeds across her flesh, dotted like 1,000 ants, said Dali. He had long been known for adding lines of ants into his paintings. Together, they eyed me like I was a treasure in a museum. I stood there awkwardly until finally Dali tapped his cane on the ground twice. Are you ready? I must admit, I must warn you that where we are going is like nothing you have ever seen. I was in Beaumarchais 14 years ago with my friend Maurice Sandos, and I saw the wild wood there. A surreal place full of monstrous statues, giants, screaming ogres, sirens, a Pegasus, gods and goddesses, and of course, Proserpina. I lifted my suitcase and gave him a nervous smile. I am ready, Signor Dali. No! He tapped me on the shoulder with his silver-tipped walking cane. I am Dali. I jumped, surprised at the strength of the gesture. Very well, Dali, I said, wondering if perhaps Lillian was right about not going. But no, I couldn't back down now. I drew a breath and gave him a nervous smile. I look forward to vanquishing the monsters. His driver retrieved my suitcase to put in the boot, then escorted me to the seat next to him. As we sped out of Rome, it felt like I was traveling through a tunnel, and every mile we drove, it was as though the light was growing a little brighter, that we were heading toward a beacon that might help me navigate the uncertain path of my future. Strangely, just as my past was blank, so too was my ability to envision a future, leaving me with a sense of emptiness and an unshakable feeling of being different. But for the first time, I felt a spark of something like hope. Thank you. There's a lot of information about the book if you're interested, about the garden. It's a real place. It's an hour north of Rome. It's full of crazy statues. And also about Salvador Dali on my website, crystalking.com. And I also have a downloadable cookbook for free that is a companion to this book, which has a ton of recipes in it. So lots of, also on crystalking.com. Thank you so much.
I think that'll work for me. Hello, everyone. I'm Ellen Austin Lee, a 2022 poetry alum of the Solstice Masters in Fine Arts program. And it's my honor to introduce Jennifer Jean, a new poetry faculty member of the Solstice MFA in Creative Writing program at LaSalle University. So much of Jean's work, both creatively and academically, centers on lifting marginalized voices and fostering social consciousness, a seamless fit for the Solstice program's mission of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Her poetry collection, Object Lesson, for example, explores human trafficking, objectification, pain, and survival, with respect and compassion for the women caught in a daily reality that few of us can imagine. Jean's poetry witnesses the truth of their lives to inform us, but more importantly, to engender empathy for those less privileged. Jean says, I believe poetry is a means to real healing, compassion, and change. The following excerpt from her poem, Bird, dedicated to the survivors of abuse and trafficking residing in a safe house in Minneapolis, appears in Rattle and is in Object Lesson. What are we looking at? A second wind, the flight inside the creature that is the holy, eternal verb, is who bent the metal, is the mother of a lighter bone, the kind that terror cannot allow. Jennifer Jean's poetry collections include Foes, Object Lesson, and The Fool. Her teaching resource book is Object Lesson, A Guide to Writing Poetry. Where Do You Live? Aina Taishu, a bilingual collection of poem responses she co-wrote and co-translated with award-winning Iraqi poet Dr. Hana Ahmed, is forthcoming from Aerosmith Press in 2025. She's a co-editor and co-translator of an anthology in development titled Other Paths for Shahrazad, Contemporary Poetry by Arab Women. Jennifer has received honors, residencies, and fellowships from the Kenyon Review Writers Workshop, Disquiet, Zonk Books, the Massachusetts Cultural Council, the Her Story Is Collective, the Academy of American Poets, the Kolkata International Poetry Festival, and the Women's Federation for World Peace. Her poetry and co-translations have appeared in Poetry, Rattle, The Common, Waxwing, On the Seawall, DMQ, Salamander, Terrain, and elsewhere. Jennifer edits poetry for Talking Writing and translations for Consequence Forum and is the program manager of 24 Pearl Street, the Fine Arts Work Center's online writing program. I wanted to say all of that since this is your first official faculty residency. So let's give a warm solstice welcome to poet and educator, Jennifer Jean.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Wow, I'm turning a little red here. So I wanted to start off tonight by reading a poem for my hometown, Los Angeles, and it's from my book Vose. And it's an acrostic based on the album cover of the same name as the title of the poem. And the album is Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. Yeah, so some of you might know that band. And the poem's called Against the Wind. All horses and homeless folk go to the beach when fires rip through California canyons. They run through surf against the wind, away from the flame of the night. When the choke smoke dies, they canter home to campfire stones, tent poles, push carts, hoof brush wire, salt block racks, and spoons, the flats of certain spatulas. Not everything unnatural is gone. In the fortified Getty Museum, St. Martin dividing his cloak with a beggar, the piebald horse, and Van Gogh's irises are safe too. Sometimes I feel less than a work of art, like a horse awash in a wave, not ablaze, like I'm home free when the ash is thick on ground I've slept on for months. Sometimes I wait for miles of asters, blue dicks, and desert pincushions for an after fire super bloom to feel useful, created, though I know that's as unwise as a California breeze after a decade of drought. So the next few poems I'm going to read are from my forthcoming collection, Where Do You Live? And that was introduced beautifully. And you said the Arabic side of the title, which I still have to practice. So so you're encouraging me by pronouncing it yourself. So Where Do You Live is a correspondence in poetry that I co-wrote with Hana Ahmed Jaber. She's an Iraqi poet, and we exchanged poems. So I would write in English. I do not speak Arabic, and she would write to me in Arabic, and then we would work with co-translators to translate each other's poems. And so we really got to know each other very, very well through that process. There's something about getting close to someone else's language, and to bring it over into yours that just transforms your relationship with that person. And a lot of translation is done, with folks who have passed on, but I find it very exciting to do this co-translation process with someone who's living, who I can talk to and create relationship with, especially across, lines of enmity, which is definitely the case. She lived through a lot of the war that was brought on by our country. So I'm going to read a few of those poems. The first one happens to be also set in Los Angeles, so I chose this one. It's called The Falconers. I don't know you yet, Hannah. I don't know if you've heard of Tinseltown, if you'd ever be drawn to this palace of narrative, this hero's journey peddler, though this plot is programmed to receive our kind. We are potential creators. We chase denouement. We begin together, walk west on Sunset Boulevard, away from the Industry of Death Museum towards Hollywood High. Pause under a grimy awning at the Budget Inn, the final place my war-torn father held me. It was so odd he'd held me once before, 48 years before. It'd been 1 year of the rat to another year of the rat. The cobalt sky slouched against us each time. This time, the door to a drug rehab center kept slamming open. Then I let him go home to his motel room. I turned west. Let's race west together, Hannah, and let that scene be happy. A small image out of Spiritus Mundi. Above us, so many dull brass stars litter Vine Street, where all tourists trek. Let's be human together instead, outstrip the setting sun. We'll need to be Californian. We'll need a convertible, though I hate those things. The sky and its potential poisons always enter. A glittering burn enters, and if you want to drive, drive. Outpace the autumn light. With one arm on the door, with one hand on the wheel, wind around the warm Santa Ana winds, point out every transplanted palm, every perched kestrel. Pull in at the end of the boulevard at Gladstone's beach, and together in this lot, we'll face the cotton candy cumulus, the periwinkle glow over cold ocean motions. With our words, we'll remake every fake enamel falcon into a gift, into freedom and clean air. We'll rewrite this town, make true all silver screen sisterhoods, all the stuff that dreams are made of. High noon. And did I tell you, Hannah, American history is wrapped in film. We watch our gunslingers meet when the sun is directly overhead, so the gunfight is fair. So neither man is blinded by anything other than hatred, short-sightedness, ingratitude, ego. Some of us believe in this scene. Some of us believe in their dusty women crying at home, but some of us believe in the fact of a clear sky so blue, two bodies can bathe in sunlight, see down the center of a dirt road in a rustic hometown, see for miles, see into the niches and nooks of each other's faces, a miracle. We think this lack of shadow is heaven, and it's only heaven if we've nothing to hide. Let's meet here, Hannah, on the original road of this mutual hometown with our translator, Wadak. And once we all get used to the terrible discomfort of imperfect understanding, we'll know heaven. We'll know friendship is possible. So I'm only going to read two more. And the first one is my version of the title poem, Where Do You Live? And the second one is her version, what she wanted to tell me about where she lived. And where we lived, it wasn't just about landscape. I brought a lot of my landscape into it, but it was also about where do we live in our hearts? Where do we want to live? Where are we forced to live? Those kinds of things. So the first one is by me, Where Do You Live? I should say I live in my body, in the knowledge I was fated for, like you said, Hannah, poetry. And even if I try hard not to, I tell all the truth, but tell it slant. I live in these secrets spelled out for the curious. I live in Salem with the ghosts of accused witches. I live in the San Fernando Valley, in California, in my poems. I live in fear of loneliness. But my real hometown is anger at the way things are when they should be better. I've decided to move away from should. I want to say I live in peace. If we're talking about time folding into the now, the future being now. At least I live in motion along those folds, sometimes when I'm talking with you, Hannah. When I fly, I think I've always lived in midair, from Boston to Kolkata, from San Francisco to Seoul. I asked a pilot once about the hometown of a baby born mid-flight. He didn't know what to say. He paused forever. He may have been telling the truth, but slant. I'm still waiting for answers. I used to live in wasted days staring at sunshine and trees. They were wasted on me then, but not now. I live there now in this poem. You can live forever in a poem. I live in the middle of creation when I can. It's the best way to live. And this is my last one. This is by Hannah Ahmed. Where do you live? I don't know the name of the first war that birthed me. Perhaps no one recorded it. Perhaps the tigress witnessed it, alone knowing every direction, alone remembering the myths and the facts, attending its flow since forever. I live here in the north where memory is bloody sorrowful, where I belong to the river and stand on one bank, one eye open, staring at the ruins of the old city decaying, whispering, "Oh God of old alleys, protect us from the next war." Here I am, watching the Shamsh Gate reanimating the walls of Nineveh, the statue of Abu Tamam, waving to arrivals, the bridges connecting the lungs of the city, the clouds eager for rain, unobscured by smoke, the river rushing without bodies of war to stop it, and many more sidewalks and other things breaking news can't mention, nor rehab for PTSD, nor reports from the BBC or CNN, nor any channels. Yes, I live here while my other eye is closed, hiding dreadful war scenes with nothing to help me form a description, not grandmother's tales, nor children's dreams, not poetry festivals, nor literary criticism, nor horror movies, not UN reports, nor history texts. No sentence in any language could bear the weight of that terror. Here, I feel my eyes swelling with it all, carrying the archives for future generations. And here, my face swells too, my arms, my torso. Oh, I'm here, embracing myself, swelled again and rising. I think I fell upwards as usual. Now, Jennifer, you may wonder, who are you? What is your hometown? And I'll answer immediately with one eye still closed. We two, we are the two eyes together forever. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
I am third semester writing for young people student, Sister Allison Regina, and I am delivering this on behalf of Caroline Osborne, our second semester fiction student who couldn't be here tonight. So all of these words are hers. I don't take any credit. I would like to begin with a brief quote from Lee Hope. While talking about the relationships between horse people and their horses, Hope says, "One almost killed me, broke many bones. Several gave me extra space. What does it say about us that we are so very involved with creatures that can do us in?" As a fellow horse person, I can attest that despite the concussions and back injuries, horse people will do whatever it takes to keep on riding. I think there is something similar to be said about riders, no? Despite the bruises to our egos, the stiff necks from hours of looking down at keyboards, the frustrated spouses, still we write. It is an honor to introduce to you all tonight Lee Hope, Editor-in-Chief at Solstice, a magazine for diverse voices, and author to a myriad of publications, including her novel Horse Fever, which was a finalist in the Midwest Book Awards. She also teaches at Changing Lives Through Literature, a program that serves men on probation and parole. Her work has been described in reviews as richly imagined and ambitious, and compelling, sneaks up on you. You wonder how it goes by so fast. Hope explores the intricacies and contradictions of what it means to be human. In one interview, she asks, "Why is it that some of us hold in our emotions to our own detriment? What constitutes repression, denial? What are the consequences?" As writers and as human beings, it is vital to empathize with other people's perspectives. Lee Hope exemplifies this ability through her writing, editorial work, and teaching. And speaking for a second to Sister Allison again, I had the pleasure of attending Lee Hope's class this afternoon on fragmented perspective. And I briefly considered rewriting the script to be in fragmented perspective to show you all the amazing things that she taught me. But I figured that it's a little too late at night and a little too late in the residency to try something that complicated. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Solstice writer in residence, Lee Hope.
So now I'm going to read from my new novel, In Progress. It's almost, after 8 years though, done, I hope. What to Take in Case of Fire is the title. It's ever so slightly based on when I was a teen and my family home burned down and we lost all we owned. In that spirit, I know we all extend to the people of LA our sympathies for their plight. I find myself riveted to the screen. There is no fire in the excerpt I'm reading, which is titled Night Stalking in the Shed. The novel has 2 points of view. I've read here before from Natalie's point of view, and tonight I will read from Matthew's. Here, a runaway 13-year-old foster child. Years ago, I was a social worker with foster children in Camden, New Jersey. So I'm going to read as he is about to break into Natalie's house and commit a robbery. So this is just before that. And it's again from What to Take in Case of Fire. The parents left at 7, Zach at 7:45 when dusk turned to dark. At 8:30, dark turned to no man's black gray. A late August heat wave must be still almost 90 shut-in degrees, a wet heat that bears down like a sweaty body on Matthew's body, holed up in the backyard shed till lights out, when inside they'll go to sleep while he waits for hours in this tight-ass 4x6 stifling cell slanted on a downward slope. At an angle, he can't stand straight. He strips off the dark hoodie to his damp black t-shirt. Zach said, in surveillance cameras, little kids in hoodies look interchangeable. No police records, no fingerprints. Zach, big brother of Matthew's buddy Roscoe from the old hood and a college dropout who runs a trespassing service, Zach calls it, and sometimes hires little kids. Focus. Inside the shed, mostly dim shapes, a power mower, rakes, clippers, a shovel, a scythe, a musty, earthy smell, like in a grave, and a grimy gray jacket hanging stiff on a hook, stained gardening gloves sticking out of pockets, so it seems like arms fill sleeves, hands fill huge, old, oily gloves. Matthew's mother wore extra small hail gloves with thin blue stripes when she gardened in the backyard of their tiny house. She grew lilies and tulips, bright, fragile blossoms that soon died off. Is it her he feels now in the shed? Somebody floats and stirs the air. She floated through days in filmy dresses, a model for department store catalogs. Not pretty enough for runways, she said, but it's how God made me. She said, God lives inside of us. And in the one photo he's got of her and him when little, sitting side by side on a stone wall, her yellow floppy straw hat, dark curls over one eye, soft face half hid by shade, more beautiful because she was only half there. Sunlight dribbling through leafy trees overhead, her white dress and skin dotted with yellow spots, like she was lit with tiny lights. You there? He asks now. She says not a word. He's used to that. I'm on to you, he says in the tight human shed, though she must know he's not. Come on in. Him sounding like a carnival barker again. She will not come when he wishes. But he feels a hovering, a slight shift of air. He opens the door just a crack, the faint whiff of a hot wind, a breeze or breath. 2 dim street lamps down by the curb, the house set back as far as a block, more or less. Up close, not trees, but a woods, Zach called them. Darker than the sky, darker than the bare shaft of light across the back, sloped lawn, Zach said, not a yard, where they have shrubs, not bushes, and landscapers, not mowers. And now the black is closing in. Those 2 kids inside must spend their days wandering from room to room in their oversized house, trying to fill up that wasted space. What are they doing up there now in that tower room? The only beam of light sifting down from that one tall, thin window must be all comfy and air-conditioned inside. The little brother, who Zach said the girl babysits, maybe not so little. It's 9:24, according to the spots of light on the illuminated numbers on his rubber waterproof watch, a 12th birthday present from Mom Margot, foster mom number 2. Matthew wants everything to be waterproof. Thirsty, he takes out the water bottle from his backpack, pours a thin stream into his mouth, a trickle onto his face, feels lightheaded, like before a trance, and lies down to wait on the damp earth floor, like the soggy sand on the shore the night when Mom and Dad lost their breath in the sea. Your father was inebriated, his caseworker said. What's that? Matthew asked. Only 6. Let's say he lost his center, the caseworker said. Where's my center? Matthew asked. You're going to a new home, she said. Try to find joy where you can. Joy? What's that? He didn't ask. He shut up. Matthew's drunk with the heat in the cell of a shed. He can't bear being cooped up. Claustrophobia, that caseworker said he has. The shut-in heat weighs on his brain, his skin, sweat and mosquitoes and crawling insects, suffocating like drowning in wet air. He's curled on the damp, soft earth like lying on soft, wet sand when he watched for them to rise out of the waves and take a breath. Why didn't Mom and Dad swim up? He'd asked the trooper, face flashlit, ghostly bright in the dark. Your father drove his vehicle through a railing off a bridge into the ocean, the trooper said. Sorry for your loss. How did you survive? Matthew, age 6, didn't know what a vehicle was or what it meant to survive, so he kept secret the hard smack of sea, the black back window open only wide enough for a little kid by where he was strapped. The car tipped. Dad's wavy hands shoved him through the crack. Kick, kick, his dad said. Don't look back. As now, the 3rd floor tower light flicks off and all falls dark. Summer damp seeping into his hoodie, his jeans, his skin. He's still in the seamy shed. Focus. A narrow flight flashes on beneath the tower and 2nd floor. Maybe the girl going down a staircase. He opens the shed a few inches wider. 9:51 on his fluorescent dial. Even the grass turned black, but now a stronger indoor light flicks on from the 2nd floor rear window and beams across the back lawn. Is that a glimpse of a white shape lit? A body that held still as if looking out, then slid away smoothly, just vanished, if he'd ever seen it? Must be the girl's bedroom. What goes on inside a room filled with pure white pillows and sheets that get bleached even when not a drop of piss contaminates them? The strong light goes dead. A weak one flicks on. Lower, maybe on a night table. Maybe she's lying down in bed on her back, dark hair spread like tentacles on the sterile white pillow. And she's thinking whatever rich girls think, not about thieves hiding in her shed. He's left in almost total dark, except from inside her room, the one tiny bright spot, like a night light. Or does it flicker like a small flame of candlelight? But no, she wouldn't fall asleep with a candle lit, would she? He gets his backpack, takes out Zach's binocs, Zach's small hammer to tap cracks in glass, and also Nick's Derringer, foster dad number 3, the gun just a prop now. Unloaded, though Matthew didn't know that when Nick got mad at him for a bad mowing job and played Russian roulette, spun the gun till it pointed at Matthew, then pulled the trigger, a click. The joke was on Matthew again, but he grabbed the gun and ran away to his old fosterhood of row houses, one built onto the next. No lawns, no shrubs, no woods. After too long, let numbers say 11:17. The little inside light has flickered out. Wait a whole hour until after lights are out to be very sure, Zach said, that she's asleep. She's all cool inside while Matthew's fucking sweltering. Claustrophobia, the humid smell of dirt, his mom's gardening gloves, his sweat trickling down onto his lips, swallowing it, tastes of salt water, of the beach, another cul-de-sac. You're moving to a fine new ranch house, his last caseworker said, on a cul-de-sac. What's that? Matthew asked. A dead end, she said. Yeah, right. He opens the shed door wider, up the deck, a willow tree. Thin branches waving him on. He takes his backpack, slips out of his sweatbox into the dark and breathes deep, smells damp dirt on himself. Only 8 when he ran off from home number 1 in daylight, caught quick. Now he'll stay in night shadows and slink. Hey, you bet I'll come back and get you, Zach said. I'm nothing if not trustworthy. Matthew steps further out into the night, not a scrap of moon above that high hedge. Get out now, he tells himself. Take off through the woods. Make a run for it. But $45, all that's left of his mowing money. Nowhere else to go. 11:49. Her light's been off 32 minutes, not an hour, but he can't wait. He'll slip across the back grass, do his old duck and dodge under the long willow branches, strip for whips when his first foster mom whipped his ass at age 6 when he pissed his bed. A sin, not housebroken, she'd said to the Bureau of Children's Services. He dashes out to beneath the willow, unzips his jeans, takes a long piss. Why is all this flowing back? Focus. Break in through the basement, Zach said. Matthew's still small enough to slide in through one of those small rectangular ground level windows. Crack the glass. Usually no alarm jacks down there, Zach said. It's safe. What if the girl's the nervous type, a light sleeper? What if she wakes? Hell no. Just tap, tap glass, slide on in, load up, hustle out. I'll be back after midnight, Zach said. You can count on me. They got money to burn, so we'll help them burn it. Charity work. Matthew asked, why not both wait together? Hey, can't leave my car parked on a dead-end private road. I might get identified, Zach said. What about me? Matthew asked. You got no identity. You're a foster kid. That's why I hired you, for Christ's sake. Oh, yeah, Matthew said. That makes sense.
Hello. I'm Bob Whalen, the 4th semester poetry student. And I'm having the microphone adjusted. Dzvinia Orlowsky has so many publications and awards. I got 4 pages here. And that will take all of her reading time. So I'm going to do my best to summarize this tome. She's a Ukrainian-American poet, translator, editor, and teacher, and a founding faculty member of the Solstice Creative Writers Program. She's born in Cambridge, Ohio, received her BA from Oberlin College, an MFA from the Warren Wilson College program for writers. She's the author of 7 collections. Her books include Convertible Night, Flurry of Stones. That was in 2009, for which she received the New England Poetry Club's Sheila Mountain Book Award. Silvertone in 2013, which was named Ohio Poetry Day Association 2014 co-poet. Handful of Bees, which was reprinted in 2009. Bad Harvest, which was published in 2018 and named a 2019 Massachusetts Book Awards must read. Her most recent collection, Those Absences Now Closest, was published in last October of 2024. She's a translator and an accomplished translator. And she co-translated memorials by Polish poet Mieczysław Jastrom. I have a typical American provincial tongue, so forgive my translations. That was awarded the 2016 National Endowment for the Arts Literature Translation Fellowship. Ukrainian poet Natalka Biletserkowicz, Eccentric Days of Hope. Her work has also appeared in numerous anthologies, receiver of the Griffin Poetry Prize Anthology, Oxford Anthology from Oxford University, and translations of the Ukrainian poet Helena Crook's poet, Lost in Living, for which they were awarded with her co-translator the 2024 National Endowment for the Arts Translation Grant. She's received the Pushcart Prize, a finalist in the Grolier Prize, winner of the 2019 New England Poetry Club Samuel Washington Allen's Prize. That was selected by Robert Pinsky, and so on. She's been in, among others, this one was interesting to me, the Journal of the American Medical Association, Kenyon Review, Lily Poetry Review, Los Angeles Review, Mom Egg Review, and many more. She is a founding editor of the New York-based Four Way Books. She was the editor of Solstice magazine from 2014 to 2017. She's been a visiting guest poet and adjunct assistant professor and special lecturer and in creative writing at Providence College, a school that I can attest to educates you fairly well. I could go on. She's now the writer in residence for our program, but I don't want to not mention her. Among her highest achievements is she's seen Jimi Hendrix twice, I think, live and in person, as well as the Beatles. So it's my honor and privilege to introduce Dzvinia Orlowsky.
Well, I feel like my life just semi-flashed before my eyes, but I'm really happy that you mentioned Hendrix and the Beatles. Mind-blowing. Thank you very much, Bob. That was really a kind, wonderful introduction, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm going to read 4 poems from my new book, but I wanted to open the reading by first honoring the poem, 2 poems by Helena Kruk, who's one of the most prominent, beloved mid-career poets in Ukraine. And my co-translator, Ali Kinsel, and I have been translating poetry for a number of years just prior to the Russian-Ukrainian war. And I had the privilege of meeting Helena this past fall when she did a reading tour of the United States, and got to talk to her firsthand about what it's like to really experience survivorship and witness war. So these are from Lost and Living, and I'm going to do my best to read the title poem, Lost and Living, in Ukrainian, followed by English. And I just wanted to mention that Lost and Living is inspired by T.S. Eliot's pageant play called The Rock, where he talks somewhat in length, or suggests how hard it is to find purpose in a fragmented world. And also, I think this poem in particular is relevant to writers. Lost and Living. Я стала мудрою, як сова. Мене тепер уникають слова, мабуть, бояча. І той письмовник, що в кутку, в якого верхній рот на замку, де ключ від нього. А часом випадає, що ж таке із голови, ні важке, ні легке, немов дорога. І ніби знає, що якось так іти до неї вітряк, маяк, а там нічого. І ані зачіпки, ні гачка, як називають ще, хто така, хоч понайписуй. Подай, будь ласка, писати чим. І той в клітинку, що там під тим, або не треба. Lost and Living. I grew as wise as an owl, but words now avoid me. Perhaps they're afraid, and that writing desk in the corner whose upper mouth is locked, where's the key? But sometimes something falls out of your head, neither heavy nor light, like a road, and you think you'll move toward her windmill lighthouse, but there's nothing there. No clue, no hook. What's she called? Who is she? However you name her. Please give me something to write with, and that lined thing underneath it. Or maybe not. A lot of war-related poems in this book. This one is untitled. No news comes from cities that don't exist. All that holds us there, an umbilical cord, no one to cut it, too fearful to gnaw through. Cirrus clouds shroud the city that isn't there. Snow falls deep to conceal, birds besiege the city that doesn't exist. Black, shiny, predatory, hungry for carrion and flesh in the city that doesn't exist, nothing to leave for later. Everything that was here is not with us. Everything that's not with us is never. Everything that's never pierces the heart, beats to bleeding, like boys after school, merciless and angry, wild with pain. And I'm going to read four poems from my new book called Those Absences Now Closest. And I will say this is a picture my father took in our Ohio meadow in the 60s. And this is a refugee, best friend of my mother. My parents were also refugees. Me, with a particularly heavy head hanging, and my sister and my mother. So I'm going to switch the tone here a little bit. A childhood poem. It's called Our Dolls Were Naked. Our dolls were naked, but our cats stayed partly clothed. A ribbon here, a brown felt hat there.
2 holes cut and fitted for their ears. My sister and I wanted them pretty, but when the priest came to dinner, they'd mew in the hallway, plunk heavy onto their sides. We waited for the priest to remove his hat, smile, extend his cool hand to touch our faces in approval, like Christ to his believers. Instead, he murmured that we were cruel and headed straight for hell. My sister's baby doll was large, shiny, round-faced. Mine was narrow, loose-limbed, rubbery. It peed rust when I squeezed its belly. The cat's clawed, scratched, refused to be babies, and like all bad mothers, we grew sharper teeth, longer noses, and learned how to change the color of our eyes. Frightened of us, our dolls suffered from stomach aches, lay prone on the brick walkway until we took them to the faceless doctor who administered lilac water jabs to the soles of their feet. Shushing them, we brushed invisible strands of hair from their faces. The cats rarely got sick. Lifting them by the armpits, we reassured them they had enough heft to eclipse the sun. The cats celebrated their 9 lives. We worried that they'd stop needing us and how we missed hugging our dolls. But the dolls, too, wanted no part of us, playing hide and seek in every darkened room we couldn't even imagine. This is a poem for my sister. It's called Without Makeup. I didn't know your late in the day eyes, cool, easy, calm lake of tired eyes. You would say a nothing green, nothing anyone would notice. I'd never known you hadn't slept, face as bland as a manila folder, without the smoke blue pencil drawn along your lower lids, silver pewter smudges running like paths of winter rain. I didn't know your eyes set the dinner table, made the bread rise, turned violets into jelly. I didn't know your eyes had candles. Maria, we are the only 2 left of our first family. Our parents, now streaks of bygone stories, even our mother's brightest shade of tangerine lipstick can't bring back. Something has washed the mascara away. Vaseline rubbed your lashes. You call it tired, unmotivated, grouchy looking. Apologize for apologizing, but I'm just beginning to see spring grass under snow, deciding which green. Oops. To winter. Love passes from prayer to a light rainfall, each drop anchorless and nameless. Where are the saints of wild grass, the ones I believed I could find if I brushed my hand through their green? I walk across the taut spaces that thread my rosary, bead after hard bead, the repeated lavender lifted to my lips, grateful for such moments when blood blossoms under the sun and sorrow finds its shade. Language of cold air, blank canvas of distance. Who's keeping count? So I say the rosary often and I get messed up with the counting. Then I got obsessed with the idea of counting while I was also really noticing how, I mean, we all know this with news or breaking news, how the volume goes up and the volume goes down. And this is Warren's news, this doesn't. And so I thought, I'm just going to Google this. And I Googled, how many deaths must it take to be considered a war? And Google had an answer, 1,000 lives. War. But the first 100 are only fooling. They've saved their caboodles from drama class. Death makeup is a breeze. They clear their throats, step into the spotlight, center stage. A mother applauds. Outside, moonlight carves its solid world. The second 100 are children again. They run through fields of daisies, fingers interlocked, index fingers pointing rat-a-tat-tat. We're safe. Migrative imagination, pretend machine guns execute a pact. The third 100 drag their feet, lost, heavy with song. Song is healthy for the soul, but who will listen? Fearful neighbors slam their doors shut. Surely you understand, they whisper. The fourth 100 never vacate their apartments. They're still there, lying quiet in their beds, their bodies packed with prayers. A concrete city block disintegrates between earth and air. The fifth 100 simply refuse to die until they find their daughter's favorite stuffed bear, the one with black button blind eyes that keeps her safe at night. The sixth 100 press their ears to a hollow wall. Who is shouting in the dark? Not everyone who hears voices is unwell. A plastic viewmaster, a last luxury to be held in their son's hands. The seventh 100 cry a creek, a stream, a river. The eighth 100 don't remember first words, don't hear last screams, their mouths open like that of a toddler gasping for air. A living heart, here. The ninth 100 believe they are still warm inside, the way a burning forest believes it's a perfect metaphor for the spiritual world, even after its ash. 999 are missing, one who got away. Praise be.
Thank you again to Crystal, Jennifer, Lee, and Dzvinia. Can we have one more round of applause for them, please?